Hello, everyone, and welcome to Then and Now. This is a podcast where history meets the headlines and we talk about how modern issues echo historical ones. I'm your host, Denny, and today we're talking about a subject that is as scandalous as it is heartbreaking. That is the topic of fake pregnancies. Yes. So, what has brought me to this topic? Well, if you are a royal watcher, this should be easy for you to guess. Yes, it was that Meghan Markle video where she was dancing. Recently, I don't know if you've seen it, but millions of people have. And they all watched with horror and fascination as Meghan Markle danced around with her husband, Prince Harry. Many people were horrified and said this was very unroyal behavior, and they labeled her a lot of things. But for others, her actions in the video strengthened the argument that she was never pregnant at all. Straight out the gate, I'm going to just say that I'm not saying that she was not pregnant. That's something that if you watch the video, you will have to make your own conclusion about. What I'm going to say, though, is that I have had children of my own. And so I know what it's like when you get to the final days, weeks before delivery. Your body's not your own. And at that point, it's difficult. Having said that, I did watch a few other videos with women who were dancing while heavily pregnant. There were some women who could barely move, but there were some of them who were really putting on a good show. So, I'm not saying that she was pregnant or wasn't pregnant. That's a decision you're going to have to make on your own. Or perhaps it's really not something that you even have to think about too hard. But because what we're doing today is comparing the story of her not being pregnant with historical women who have been accused of the same thing. Believe it or not, Meghan Markle is not the first woman in the public eye to be accused of faking a pregnancy. Indeed, she's not the first royal woman to face such an accusation. As you can imagine, in the world of royalty, women, the royal women, their bodies are not entirely their own, right? It's also, it can be considered a vessel for the dynasty. The future of the royal line rests in the womb of these women. And when there's no heir, no baby, there can be a lot of concern. So we're going to talk about two women who had similar, not necessarily similar, but they had this whole conspiracy around them as well regarding their pregnancies. We're going to talk about Queen Mary I of England, and we're going to talk about Mary of Modena, who was the wife of King James II. These women's pregnancies, or lack thereof, became the subject of intense scrutiny and scandal. So let's jump right in, and we're going to start with Queen Mary I of England, and she is sometimes called Bloody Mary. She was the first child of King Henry VIII. So she was a daughter of King Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon. And we all know that King Henry had other children and he had a son. And this son was the one who finally inherited the throne. And nobody thought that Mary would ever see the throne or would ever become queen. But despite the odds that were stacked against her, when her brother Edward died, she was crowned Queen of England. Now, this is 1554, and at the ripe age of 38, Mary, she got married to Prince Philip of Spain, and now they're trying to have a baby. The truth is, at 38, even by modern standards, she is old to be having a baby, or at least to be starting her journey as a mother. And if it is problematic today, we can only imagine what it was like then. Mary was under a lot of pressure to have a child, and as England's reigning queen, she really needed to produce an heir. Now, here's the thing about Mary that we have to bear in mind. This was a highly religious society that they were living in at the time, and under her father, King Henry, England had become a Protestant country, but Mary was raised a Catholic by her mom, and she is firmly convinced that Roman Catholicism is the right religion, and so she wanted to lead the country back. And one of the ways that she could do this is to have a Catholic son on the throne. So if she were to create a Catholic dynasty, then the country would turn back to Rome. And so she was under pressure to have a child, and to not just have a child, but to have a Roman Catholic heir. Nevertheless, in September of 1554, she had reason to rejoice because she stopped menstruating, she started gaining weight, and she even had morning sickness. By May of the following year, rumors started to fly that she wasn't pregnant. And by June, it was obvious that something was wrong. By July, her belly started to recede. There was no baby. How embarrassing. How painful. Her husband Philippe left and he went to war. I can only imagine what poor Mary was going through at this time. Needless to say, she fell into depression. Many historians believe that she suffered from what is called a false pregnancy. And it is it's a real condition where a woman's body mimics all the symptoms of a pregnancy, but there was no real baby. And they figure that this is what happened to her. It's really a psychological and physical response to an overwhelming pressure, to be pregnant. And as a queen, you can imagine, as I outlined before, the kind of pressure that was on her to actually produce a child. Well, it wasn't over for Mary. She would go through the same thing 2 years later. Her husband came back from war, and she thought she was pregnant again, but only this time it was actually worse. Instead of having a baby, she started to grow sicker, she got weaker, and finally, in November of 1558, she died from what was possibly ovarian cancer. Mary, ladies and gentlemen, was only 42 years old. Having had no heir, her half-sister Elizabeth became the Queen of England, and Elizabeth ushered in a Protestant reign, something that Mary was trying so desperately not to have in England. How sad. She really wasn't pregnant, but she wasn't faking her pregnancy, or at least not deliberately faking a pregnancy. Although she really wanted to be pregnant, she really thought she was pregnant. So she wasn't, I wouldn't call her a deliberate faker, but she really wasn't pregnant. That's a sad story, I think. We're going to move on now to our other royal wife, who too was accused of faking a pregnancy. Now, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard the phrase, stranger than fiction? Well, this incident that I'm about to share with you proves that the saying is very true. This is a story of Mary of Modena, and she was married to King James II of England. Both Mary and King James were both Catholics, but remember I said to you that England had become a Protestant country. James was raised a Protestant, but somewhere in his life he went back, or he changed to being a Catholic. I don't think it really bothered the Parliament that much, because he wasn't really the king. His older brother Charles was the king of England, but Charles died and James became king. This is where the trouble kind of looked a little troublesome, because here it is that we now have a Catholic king, and the Protestant Parliament is saying we do not want a Catholic king. But even so, they weren't terribly concerned about it, because James was quite old by then, and even though he had 2 daughters, his 2 children were grown women by then. They were married, and they were Protestants. So the only fear that the Parliament had was that, okay, if he should have a child now with his second wife, Mary of Modena, This child would be raised a Catholic, and then this child could try to force everybody to become Catholics. The worst fears of the Parliament came true. Yeah, it happened. Mary was very young and fertile, and she became pregnant. And in 1673, she gave birth to a bouncing baby boy named James Francis Edward Stuart, Prince of Wales. This was very bad news for the Protestants, who did not want a Catholic dynasty. So they turned to rumor and scandal. Some even accused the Queen of wearing a fake belly. Does that sound familiar? She was accused of wearing a fake belly. This is during her pregnancy. They started to make up all sorts of stories about her. And some even said that she was going to try to smuggle a baby into the birthing room. So they started to say all sorts of things about the pregnancy even before the baby was born, because there was this fear that it was going to be a boy. So knowing that these rumors are out there, the king tried to get ahead of everything, and he tried to make sure that there were as many people as possible who could witness the delivery of the baby. So the king, he made sure that there were people present to witness the birth and to record what they saw. This record by the witnesses was the king's undoing. It was quite unfortunate that he made this decision. But I just want to pause here a little bit, and I want to say, does this too sound familiar? First, the fake pregnancy, that she was wearing a fake belly. Mary was wearing a fake belly. That one is familiar because people have said that Meghan Markle wears a fake belly or wore a fake belly. And then this recording of what happened during the birthing of the baby, this too has a similar echo to what Meghan Markle did, because remember, she recorded herself dancing around in the delivery room. And I'm sure that this record is supposed to show that she, how pregnant she prove her pregnancy in the delivery room. And now there's this backlash. And as I'm going to show you, it is the witnesses, or the people that the king called into the room to witness the birthing of the baby, that really brought him down. Okay, so what happened? Let's go back to the King and Queen of England. One of the persons that they invited into the room to give a record of what took place was a midwife. And the midwife said that during the labor, a warming pan was brought into the room, and it was placed into the queen's mattress, or it was placed into her bed, while she was there in labor. When the enemies of the king heard this, they spun such a story, it was unbelievable. They said a baby had been smuggled into the room in the warming pan, and then the baby was presented to everybody as a newborn prince. They even said that the baby was taken from a servant and given to the queen. Thus, it was this story that gave birth to the warming pan scandal. This scandal led to William of Orange, who was a Protestant, to invade England and, with the support of Parliament, to seize the throne. Now, let me put a little context to William of Orange, because he really had a claim to the throne through birthright, through lineage. He could claim the throne of England, and he was also King James' son-in-law. He did have a claim to the throne, so he was invited. He was in Netherlands, and the Parliament sent word to him and say, you know what, you need to come over here and take over the throne. You're a Protestant, and this king of ours, this wicked king, he and his wife just had a Catholic baby, and they even lied because it wasn't a real baby. It was brought into the birthing room in a warming pan, and they're going to fool us all and try to turn the country back into Catholics. So come on over and invade us. So it wasn't really a bloody overthrow. The king was allowed to leave. He and his wife and their newborn baby, they were allowed to leave England. In one final act of defiance, the king, King James, threw the great seal of the realm into the River Thames, and then he fled to France with his family. He did try to reclaim his throne, but it didn't work. His efforts to become king again. Just did not work. Now, after a few years, the Parliament passed a law that says that no Roman Catholic can inherit the throne of England. So the Protestants, they won after all. Honestly, if this story with this warming pan scandal, if it wasn't true, I wouldn't believe it. So as I said before, royal wives, and by extension women really, who are married into families that are creating a dynasty, these women are duty-bound to produce children of their own bodies that will carry on the family line. It's in the fine print of the marriage contract somewhere. Just kidding. But the fact is that it is expected of them. So at this point, we come full circle and we are going to go back to Meghan Markle. Her children are in fact in line to inherit the throne of England. Even though they might be far down the line, they are in line. They may never see the throne of England, but they are on the list. So no matter where they fall in the line, there is something very mentally settling about knowing that the person who inherits something is the one who really should inherit it. As I said before, her pregnancy is something of concern to a lot of persons, because if any of her children should inherit and they were never really born of her body, it's a matter of concern, as we have seen with Mary of Modena. When it was thought that the baby wasn't really hers, the king was deposed. So there is that thinking. But I'm not saying she wasn't pregnant. That's something that whoever has that power needs to decide and needs to figure out. But I ask you, we are really looking at modern stories, their historical counterparts. Whose story surprised you the most? Was it Mary Tudor? Or maybe I should ask, whose story broke your heart the most? Mary Tudor or Mary of Modena? Or maybe Meghan Markle? Whose story is most surprising or heartbreaking? Please let me know in the comments below. And thank you for joining me on Then and Now. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe, share with somebody who you think might like it, and leave me a comment. It will help others to find the show. Until next time, I'm Denny, reminding you that history isn't behind us, it's all around us. Until next time, take good care.